Today, we're taking a close look at a really powerful piece. It's an opinion article, very strongly worded.
Yeah, it's titled A Cry from Wounded Gaza to a World Where Conscience Has Died by Mustafa al-Sharqawi. Quite a title.
It really is. And our goal today, well, it's to understand the core arguments, the strong emotions in this piece.
Exactly. We want to unpack what al-Sharqawi is saying, the main grievances and accusations he's making.
And we should be clear, this is about understanding his perspective from the article itself.
Absolutely. Regardless of our own views, it's obviously a deeply sensitive topic, and the language is intense.
Very intense.
Yeah.
So let's be upfront. We're exploring the content, the arguments within the article, not endorsing the specific views presented.
Right. Just trying to grasp what he's conveying.
Okay. So the article starts by setting a really stark scene in Gaza.
It does. He calls Gaza a blessed land right at the start.
But then immediately contrasts that.
Yeah, saying it's now stained with the blood of its children. That opening really sets a tone of, well, tragedy and outrage.
And from that point, he launches into some very serious accusations. He talks about the Zionist occupation, his term for Israeli control.
And he alleges what he calls horrifying massacres. He's very specific about who he believes is being targeted.
Innocents, right? Children, women, the elderly.
Yes. And he gives examples to back this up, like homes being destroyed.
Mosques bombed, hospitals targeted, things like that.
A really crucial part of his argument seems to be that this entity he calls criminal, his term, doesn't distinguish between fighters and civilians.
Right. He basically says the aim is just killing, destruction.
And he uses the term ethnic cleansing. He believes it's being done with, maximum force. The language he uses is very graphic, very visceral.
Definitely designed to hit hard. He uses phrases like, what are they? Heart-melting scenes?
Heart-melting and liver-bursting, yeah. To describe these images, he wants you to picture small bodies and rubble, grieving women.
The elderly, starving and sick. It's a devastating picture he paints.
And he frames all this as happening under a suffocating siege.
That's been going on for, what, over 2 months, according to the article?
Yeah, 2 months and more. And he emphasizes that essentials, food, medicine, fuel, they're being blocked.
Which, in his view, cuts off any chance of a dignified life for, well, over 2 million people.
Exactly. He sees it as collective punishment.
Yeah.
And this whole desperate situation he describes, it leads him straight into condemning the world's reaction, or lack of it.
Yeah, the lack of reaction is a huge theme. He asks that question, until when this strange silence.
Right. You can really feel the frustration there. He calls it a shameful silence in the face of what he sees as just blatant injustice.
And he seems to particularly target the West.
Oh, definitely. He directly challenges Western claims about upholding human rights, freedoms, all those values.
He uses these rhetorical questions, doesn't he? They're quite sharp.
Very sharp. Like, are Gazan human rights not considered? Or is the blood of Gazan children and women worthless?
It's a direct accusation of hypocrisy.
Pretty much. He asks, where are these rights for women and children that are talked about everywhere else but Palestine? Where's the human dignity they supposedly defend?
He's really pointing out what he sees as a massive contradiction between words and actions.
A complete disconnect. And it fuels, you can tell, a lot of distrust.
He even makes that comparison, suggesting animal welfare gets more attention.
Yeah, it's a really provocative comparison. He asks if animals get more concern than Palestinians who he says are being killed and starved. It just highlights this profound sense of being abandoned, I think.
And building on that idea of silence, he then really goes after the United States.
Right. For him, this isn't just passive silence. He sees it as active complicity, actual support for the aggression.
That's when he uses those really strong terms. Head of the snake.
Head of the snake and sponsor of tyranny on earth. Very, very strong language.
And he lays out how he thinks America provides this support. 2 main ways.
Yeah. First, he says, by supplying the Zionist entity, his term again, with bombs and weapons.
Weapons, he says, are used for killing and destruction.
And second, the political side. He talks about absolute political support, which he feels gives a green light for everything happening.
He also throws in media support, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Accusing it of being biased.
He does. Shameless media support, he calls it. He argues it distorts facts, flips the script on who's the victim and who's the aggressor.
Basically whitewashing, in his view.
Right. And he wraps up that section with this intense curse on American hypocrisy and its infidel Western allies. That word infidel really stands out.
It certainly does. The anger is just palpable.
It really is. And this feeling of betrayal, according to the author, it doesn't stop with the West. It extends to the Arab world, too.
Yes, he expresses astonishment, shame,
Hmm.
regarding Arab rulers,
Astonishment and shame, yeah. He accuses them point blank of complete silence and clear betrayal.
as if what's happening in Gaza just doesn't concern them.
Or like the blood being shed isn't, their own people's blood.
And the accusation gets even more serious.
It does. He suggests some might actually be secretly helping the enemy, participating in the crime, as he puts it, through silence, collusion, conspiracy. That's a heavy charge.
A very heavy charge. And he follows it with a prayer for them to be exposed for divine justice. It shows just how disillusioned he is, really, with everyone.
Both globally and regionally, yeah. Which then leads him to talk about the axis of resistance. And there's disappointment there, too.
Right. This is interesting because this is a group, or groups, that hope was apparently placed on.
Exactly. This axis of resistance, the term for those opposing Israeli and Western influence, he questions if that hope was, well, basically a waste.
Because he doesn't see any real action.
He sees a lack of action that actually brings relief or stops what he calls the enemy's plans. He gets specific.
What does he point to?
Well, he mentions Iran negotiating with the Great Satan America. He notes Hezbollah seems to have gone quiet. He talks about the Houthis starting talks with America, predicting they'll be pointless, maybe even leading to talks with Israel. And he says those fiery statements from Iraqi militias, they've vanished.
So it sounds like he's seeing deals in silence instead of resistance.
Pretty much. And it makes him ask that big question. Was it all just slogans? Was it just talk? A mirage when things got real?
That really captures a sense of deep letdown.
Definitely a reevaluation, maybe, and all this perceived failure, this abandonment from, well, seemingly everyone.
It leads him back to God, doesn't it?
Yes, total reliance on divine intervention. That phrase, Allah is sufficient for us and he is the best disposer of affairs, it becomes like a mantra.
He says it's the only sincere response left.
In a world where he believes, quote, humanity has died and lost all sense of justice.
And he repeats it for everyone he sees as complicit, the silent, the ones who didn't act.
It's his response to all of them. And the article ends with this fervent prayer for Gaza's victory and relief.
But even as it concludes, he keeps pushing with these rhetorical questions.
He does, like highlighting the contradiction. We have all this technology, but can't get basic supplies into Gaza.
And questioning how, after he mentions 50,000 martyrs,
Yeah.
how can anyone even think about a new offensive?
It's posed as incomprehensible. And then comes this final, almost like barrage of curses.
Aimed at global hypocrisy, the West.
Yep. Cursing hypocrisy that makes human rights meaningless. Cursing the infidel West for complicity and bloodshed. Cursing the mockery of human rights.
The UN gets called shameful.
And anyone who distorts facts or justifies killing, it's incredibly intense.
The very last words are a prayer.
Right. A final prayer to Allah for victory, relief, and importantly, retribution for Gazans against their enemies and, well, everyone who supported those enemies or abandoned Gaza.
Wow. So summing up, this article by Mustafa al-Sharqawi is just a raw, powerful cry of anguish and condemnation.
Absolutely. Aimed at the situation in Gaza itself, but also, maybe even more so, at the perceived global indifference, the alleged complicity, particularly from the West and Arab nations.
And even disappointment with those expected to resist. The overall feeling is one of betrayal, abandonment.
And ultimately, turning to divine power when all human systems seem, in his view, to have failed.